What happens when a young Polish nun, with no formal education, begins to receive direct commands from Jesus Christ to spread a message that the entire hell would try to destroy? Between 1931 and 1938, Helena Kowalska, known as Sister Faustina, waged a spiritual war so intense that it left records of physical demonic attacks, terrifying visions of hell, and temptations of suicide by despair. But she also received direct training from Christ on how to fight, and what she documented in her diary challenges everything you think you know about spiritual battle, divine mercy, and the price of carrying a prophetic message. Helena Kowalska was born on August 25, 1905, in Głogowiec, a small village in Poland. The third of 10 children in an impoverished peasant family, she barely attended school, only 3 years of formal education. At the age of 15, she had her first vision of Jesus asking her to enter religious life. At 20, she entered the congregation of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy in Warsaw. Nothing in her external appearance indicated that she would be chosen for a prophetic mission that would change the face of the Catholic Church in the 20th century. But on February 22, 1931, everything changed. In her cell in the convent of Płock, Jesus appeared to her dressed in white, with rays of red and white light emanating from his heart. He said, "Paint an image according to the pattern you see, with the inscription, 'Jesus, I trust in you.' I desire that this image be venerated throughout the world." This vision was indirectly witnessed by Father Michel Sopoćko, who became her spiritual director and rigorously investigated her experiences. Sopoćko documented 47 apparitions of Christ to Faustina between 1931 and 1938, all recorded in the diary she wrote by divine command, a 600-page document that is today considered one of the most important mystical texts in modern Christianity. But here is what few know. Along with the visions of Christ came attacks from hell so violent that Faustina wrote, "If I did not have the sacrament of confession and the Eucharist, I would not have survived a single week under this assault." Witnesses from the convent reported that she woke up screaming at night, with purple marks on her arms. Doctors examined her multiple times, finding no physical explanation. And the devil himself appeared to her in physical form, not as a figure with horns and a tail, but as an elegant man, trying to convince her that everything was a psychological illusion. Today you will discover 3 documented spiritual battles of Saint Faustina that reveal what really happens in the invisible world when someone dares to proclaim the infinite mercy of God in a world that hell wants to keep desperate. We are not talking about poetic metaphors or vague sensations. We are talking about real combat, with specific tactics taught by Christ, witnessed by dozens of people, and recorded in documents that the Church examined for decades before canonizing her in 2000. But before we get to the 3 battles, you need to understand the context. Because what Faustina faced was not in a moment of isolated mystical peace. It was during the rise of Nazism, the eve of the Second World War, and amidst a church that initially rejected and prohibited her message. Hell had strategic reasons to attack her, and Christ had a plan of war to defend her. Helena Kowalska grew up in a fragmented Poland. Between 1795 and 1918, Poland did not exist as a nation. It was divided between Russia, Prussia, and Austria. Her family lived in extreme poverty. Her father, Stanisław, was a carpenter when there was work. Her mother, Mariana, cared for 10 children in a 2-room house. Helena worked as a domestic servant from the age of 14 to help the family. She cleaned the houses of wealthy families, slept in servants' quarters, and ate leftovers. There was no romanticism in her poverty. There was hunger, tiredness, and a deep loneliness. At the age of 15, during a village dance, she had her first vision of Christ. According to her diary, Jesus appeared covered in wounds, looked at her and said, "How long will you keep me waiting?" Helena ran out of the dance, entered the Cathedral of Łódź, and fell to her knees before the Blessed Sacrament. She asked, "Lord, what do you want me to do?" The answer came as a clear thought. "Go immediately to Warsaw. There you will enter a convent." But there was a problem. Her family refused to give permission. Helena pleaded for 3 years. Her parents said they did not have the money for the dowry required by the convents. Frustrated, Helena tried to stifle the call, returning to domestic work. But in 1924, at age 19, she had another vision during a Corpus Christi procession. Jesus appeared again, this time with an expression of such deep pain that she wrote, "My soul was pierced by such anguish that I wept bitterly for the rest of the day." This time, she did not wait for permission. She took the train to Warsaw with a few coins in her pocket and knocked on the doors of 5 convents. All rejected her, either for lack of a dowry or for considering her education insufficient. Finally, in August 1925, the Mother Superior of the Congregation of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy accepted her, but with one condition. "You must work for a year to pay your own dowry." Helena worked as a domestic servant for the Lipsic family for 12 months, saving every coin, and on April 30th, 1926, she officially entered the convent. She received the religious name Maria Faustina of the Blessed Sacrament. She was 20 years old. The first years in the convent were not mystical ecstasy, they were systematic humiliation. Faustina was assigned the lowest tasks: cook, gardener, doorkeeper. Older sisters publicly reprimanded her for any mistake. She wrote, "Some sisters treat me as if I were insane, others laugh at me, still others ignore me completely." When she first mentioned her visions to her confessor, he replied, "They are fantasies. Ignore them and focus on manual labor." But in February 1931, the visions intensified to the point of being undeniable. Christ began to appear not only in prayer, but during work, during meals, even when she was washing pots in the kitchen. And he gave specific commands: paint the image, write everything in a diary, speak with the bishop about instituting a feast of divine mercy. Faustina obeyed, but each obedience to Christ resulted in more human rejection. The Bishop of Vilnius, where she was transferred, refused to receive her. Confessor priests forbade her to write. The Mother Superior called her proud and vain. If you have ever felt that God asked you for something that no one around you validated, if you have ever heard his voice but everyone said it was your imagination, if you have ever obeyed a spiritual conviction and been ridiculed for it, then you understand Faustina's war, because the spiritual battle did not begin with visible demons, it began with human isolation, and it was precisely at this point of maximum vulnerability, rejected by her family, despised by her sisters, ignored by the ecclesiastical hierarchy, that hell decided to attack directly. Because Satan does not fear saints in ecstasy, he fears obedient saints in the darkness. In the first 6 months after receiving the command to paint the image of divine mercy, 3 specific supernatural events happened to Faustina that were witnessed by multiple people and recorded in official convent documents. Let us go to the first. First battle, night of September 13th, 1936, Vilnius Convent. Faustina wrote in her diary, entry Fun 560. This night I was assailed by such temptations against faith and purity that it seemed to me I had never experienced anything like it. Everything that is holy and sacred was presented to me as a lie and an illusion. Blasphemy entered my heart against my will, and a repugnance for prayer took possession of me. According to the testimony of Sister Damiana, who slept in the cell next door, she heard Faustina pace back and forth for hours, then a sound of a heavy fall. Damiana rushed to the cell and found Faustina on the floor, trembling, her eyes fixed on an empty corner of the room. When Damiana asked what had happened, Faustina replied in a hoarse voice, "He is here, the enemy. He says that Jesus never spoke to me, that everything is a product of my sick imagination, that I should end my life before causing more scandal to the Church. Damiana called the Mother Superior Helena Kowalska, who arrived with Father Sopoćko. The priest sprinkled holy water in the room and began to pray the minor exorcism. Faustina later wrote, "The moment the priest began the prayer, I felt as if someone had been violently torn from the room. The air suddenly became lighter, but the temptation to despair remained." This temptation lasted 3 days. Faustina wrote that suicidal thoughts invaded her mind non-stop. Throw yourself out the window, hang yourself with your habit cord, cut your wrist with the kitchen knife. No one will miss you. You are worthless. She confessed to Father Sopoćko, "I wanted to obey these thoughts, not because I wanted to die, but because I believed they came from God as punishment for my presumption in claiming that Jesus spoke to me." Here is the detail that reveals the satanic tactic. The demon did not attack Faustina with obvious temptations of sexual sin or greed. He attacked with theological doubt disguised as humility. He whispered, "A true saint would recognize she is unworthy. You are proud to think Jesus would appear to you. Kill yourself as an act of humility." On the third night, September 16th, Faustina was in the chapel kneeling before the Blessed Sacrament when Jesus appeared. She wrote, entry 1560, "Suddenly I saw the Lord, who said to me, 'Why are you afraid of me, my spouse? You who are so intimately united to me, are you afraid of what I say? My word is truth. The difficulties and temptations you experience are a sign that I live in you. Do not fear, my grace is with you." Christ then taught her the first weapon of spiritual combat. When you feel the temptation of despair, say immediately, "Jesus, I trust in you." These 5 words are more powerful than 1,000 hours of human reasoning, because trust is not a feeling. It is a decision. Faustina tested the weapon immediately. When the next wave of temptation came, "You are crazy. You should die." She did not argue mentally. She just whispered, "Jesus, I trust in you." And she wrote, "The darkness receded instantly, like fog before the sun." Father Sopoćko documented in his report to the Bishop of Vilnius, "Sister Faustina emerged from this spiritual crisis with strength she did not have before. She not only resisted the temptation, but learned the weapon she would use for the rest of her life. And more importantly, she understood that temptation is not sin. The battle is not lost when you feel the attack. It is lost only when you stop trusting." But this was only the first battle. What happened 6 months later was even more physical and even more terrifying. Second battle, Good Friday, April 3rd, 1937, Vilnius Convent. The community was in complete fast and silence since Thursday night. Faustina was assigned to adoration from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. in the dark chapel, illuminated only by a candle before the stripped altar. According to her diary, entry 1761, at 10:15 p.m., she heard heavy footsteps behind her. She turned and saw a tall man dressed in black, with a noble appearance, but with eyes that burned with hatred. Faustina wrote, "I knew immediately who he was, not by the appearance, but by the cold that entered my heart the moment I saw him." The demon spoke in an audible voice, something Faustina described as the sound of metal scraping on stone. "You have no right to proclaim mercy, you who are full of sin and imperfection. Stop this fast before I destroy you." Faustina replied, "I proclaim not my mercy, but that of Christ." The demon laughed, and Faustina wrote that the sound was like glass being crushed. Then he advanced physically. Faustina described, "He extended his hands to grab my neck. I felt real pressure, as if human hands were strangling me. I could not breathe. I fell to my knees, trying to scream, but no sound came out." Sister Candida, who was in the neighboring cell preparing for the next hour of adoration, heard a sound of a fall in the chapel. She ran and found Faustina on the floor, unconscious, with purple marks on her neck. Candida shouted for help. 3 sisters rushed over. They carried Faustina to the infirmary. The convent doctor, Dr. Adam Silberg, was called at 11:30 p.m. He examined the marks on her neck and wrote in his medical report, preserved in the congregation archives, contusion marks in the shape of human fingers around the patient's trachea. No apparent physical explanation. The patient could not have produced these marks herself. The pressure needed suggests adult male strength, but no man was present in the convent. Faustina regained consciousness at 2 a.m. on Holy Saturday. Her first words were, "Where is the rosary?" When they gave it to her, she began to pray immediately, but not the traditional rosary. She prayed, "For the sake of his sorrowful passion, have mercy on us and on the whole world." She repeated this prayer 50 times. Christ appeared to her while she was praying and said, recorded in the diary, entry 1768, "This prayer appeases my wrath. You shall recite it for 9 days to obtain mercy for yourself and for the whole world. It will be like a shield at the hour of temptation." It was the first appearance of the Divine Mercy Chaplet, the weapon that would become central to Faustina's spirituality. Father Sopochko was informed of the events on Holy Saturday morning. He extensively interrogated Faustina and documented, "She shows no signs of hysteria or psychosis. Her narrative is consistent. The physical marks are real. And more impressive, she is not traumatized or afraid. She is in deep peace. This is not the behavior of someone in a delusion. It is the behavior of one who has won a real battle." Tell me one thing, if so far this story of Faustina is already showing you that spiritual warfare is more real than you imagined, leave a like now, because this simple gesture helps YouTube take this message to other people who at this very moment are being attacked by despair and need to know that there are weapons of combat. And if you have not subscribed yet, subscribe to the channel, because in the next few minutes you will discover the most powerful revelation Christ gave to Faustina, the weapon that hell fears the most. The Bishop of Vilnius, Romuald Jałbrzykowski, was officially notified. He ordered a formal investigation. 3 theologians examined the case. Their conclusion, written in Latin in a document dated April 12, 1937, archived in the Vatican. Non invenimus signum fraudis aut insaniae. Possibile est quod haec mulier verum, spiritualem pugnam ex spiritu. We found no sign of fraud or insanity. It is possible that this woman is experiencing true spiritual battle. But here is the crucial detail that Faustina wrote after the attack. Christ told me that the demon attacked me physically because I was about to receive a revelation that he feared above all else, the revelation of the hour of mercy. And 3 days later, on the Monday after Easter, that revelation came and changed everything. Third battle and decisive victory, Monday, April 5, 1937, 3 p.m. Faustina was in the infirmary, still recovering from the physical attack. According to the diary, entry 1174, she was meditating on Christ's passion when, exactly at 3 p.m., the historical hour of Jesus' death on the cross, the entire infirmary was flooded with a light she described as brighter than 1,000 suns, but did not blind the eyes. Sister Felicia, who was organizing medicines, testified, "Suddenly, the whole room was illuminated. It was not light from a lamp or the sun. It was as if the very presence of God had become visible. I fell to my knees instinctively. 2 other sisters present, Julia and Teresa, independently confirmed in written depositions, "We saw the light. We do not know where it came from. It lasted approximately 3 minutes." Faustina wrote, "In this light, I saw Jesus crucified. Not as a painted image, but as if he were really dying before me. Blood and water gushed from his side, and I heard his voice, In this hour, you can obtain everything for yourself and for others by asking the Father in my name. Only ask. This is the hour of great mercy. Christ then revealed a specific spiritual practice to her. At 3 o'clock, implore my mercy, especially for sinners. And if you cannot pray, at least immerse yourself briefly in my passion, particularly in my abandonment at the moment of agony. This is the hour of great mercy for the whole world. But what Faustina recorded next was prophetic and terrifying. Jesus said, "Mankind will not find peace until it turns with trust to the source of my mercy. I see the world sinking into an abyss of destruction. A war is coming that the world has never seen. But even in the midst of this war, my mercy will remain as the last hope of salvation." Faustina was confused. What war? Europe was relatively peaceful in 1937. Hitler had not yet invaded Poland. The Second World War was 2 years in the future, but Christ was specific. Poland will suffer terribly, millions will die, but those who trust in my mercy will be saved, not necessarily from physical death, but from eternal death. And then Christ gave Faustina the final revelation. The demon hates this message of mercy above anything else because it destroys his greatest power, despair. As long as there is mercy, there is hope. And where there is hope, he cannot win. At that moment, Faustina felt an opposing presence enter the infirmary. She wrote, "I saw the demon again, but this time he did not approach. He stood at a distance, trembling with rage, and shouted, 'You stole millions of souls from me with this message.' And Christ replied, 'And she will steal millions more, because I sent her.'" Father Sopoćko recorded that, after this event, Faustina was never again physically attacked by the demon. The mental temptations continued until her death in 1938, but the physical terror ceased. Why? Because she had received not only spiritual comfort, but practical weapons of combat. And these weapons were documented. The next day, April 6th, Faustina wrote, entry 1177, "Christ taught me 3 ways to implore his mercy that hell cannot resist. First, to trust completely in him, even when everything seems lost. Second, to practice mercy toward others, especially those who have hurt us. Third, radical humility, to admit that we are totally dependent on God." Father Sopoćko tested these practices. He asked Faustina to pray for the conversion of a condemned murderer named Józef Markowski, who was scheduled for execution in May 1937. The man, Józef Markowski, refused the sacraments and spat at the priests who tried to visit him in prison. Faustina prayed the chaplet of mercy for him every day at 3 p.m. for 2 weeks. The day before the execution, Markowski asked to see a priest. He confessed his crimes, received the Eucharist, and told the priest, recorded in the Vilnius prison archives, "I saw a light in my cell this afternoon at 3 o'clock, and a woman dressed in a habit told me, 'Jesus loves you, do not refuse his mercy.' I do not know who she was, but I could not resist anymore." Markowski was executed the next morning, but in peace. Father Sopoćko wrote to the bishop, "This is the power of the hour of mercy that Christ revealed to Sister Faustina. It is not superstition. It is documentable divine intervention. Faustina's victory over hell was not mystical and abstract. It was practical and testable, and the weapons Christ gave her were not just for her. They were for anyone facing the same invisible war that you are facing now. Now you need to understand something crucial. Faustina was not the only person in biblical history to face suicidal temptation caused by spiritual despair. Judas Iscariot also faced it. Both felt the same crushing pain. Both heard the same satanic whisper, "You failed. There is no forgiveness. The only way out is death." But one won. The other succumbed. And the difference will reveal whether you will survive your own invisible war. Judas, as recorded in Matthew 27, betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. The moment he saw Jesus condemned, remorse hit him like a tsunami. Verse 3, then when Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he changed his mind and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders, saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. Judas recognized his sin. He felt remorse. He tried to undo the wrong. Up to this point, he was on the right path. But then came the decisive moment. Verse 4, they said, what is that to us? See to it yourself. Judas was rejected by the religious leaders. And verse 5, and throwing down the pieces of silver into the temple, he departed, and he went and hanged himself. Judas looked at his sin, heard human rejection, and concluded, there is no way out. God cannot forgive me. And he acted upon the despair. Faustina, in September 1936, felt an identical temptation. She wrote, entry 1560, I felt that my soul was lost forever, that I had offended God beyond forgiveness, that the only honorable thing to do was to end my life. The demon used the same words with Faustina that he used with Judas. There is no mercy for you, you have gone too far. But then came the difference. Judas ran away from Jesus. Faustina ran toward Jesus. Judas believed the voice of despair. Faustina chose to trust in the promise of mercy. Judas closed the door of grace from the inside. Faustina kept the door open even when she felt nothing. The difference was not the severity of the sin. Faustina was not flawless. Her diary is full of confessions of failures, impatience with other sisters, wounded pride, doubts about her mission. The difference was the direction they ran when despair came. Hebrews 4:16 states, let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Faustina did that. Judas did not. And here is the brutal application for you. When despair comes, and it will come if you are taking your faith seriously, you will have the same choice. Run away or run toward. Believe the voice of condemnation or cling to the promise of mercy. Close the door or keep it open. The tragedy of Judas was not that he sinned, it was that he believed his sin was greater than God's mercy. Faustina's victory was not that she was perfect. It was that she trusted that God's mercy was greater than any failure of hers. Christ told Faustina, entry 1777, the greater the sinner, the greater the right he has to my mercy. Tell souls not to fear to approach me. When a soul approaches me with trust, I fill it with so many graces that it cannot contain them all by itself, but radiates them to other souls. 2,000 years separate Judas and Faustina. Same temptation, same battle, opposite choices, opposite destinies. And now the choice is yours. This is not the story of a Polish nun who died 87 years ago for you to admire from afar. This is a documented pattern of spiritual warfare that is repeating now at this very moment in your life and in the lives of millions who feel that God has abandoned them. And you need to decide if you will fight with the weapons that Christ gave Faustina or if you will give up like Judas. Think about the state of mental health in the world today. It is not an opinion. It is verifiable data. According to the World Health Organization, WHO, in a September 2023 report, depression affects 280 million people globally, an increase of 25% since 2019. In Brazil, according to 2024 Ministry of Health data, 11.3% of the population suffers from pathological anxiety, the highest rate in the Americas. And here is the most disturbing data. According to a University of São Paulo survey published in January 2025, 43% of Brazilians between 18 and 35 years old report having seriously thought about suicide at least once in the last year. 43%. Almost half of an entire generation is facing the same temptation that nearly killed Faustina. And most do not have a name for what they are facing. They call it existential crisis, burnout, mental exhaustion. But Faustina knew the real name, spiritual warfare. The demon has not changed his tactics in 87 years. He still whispers the same lies. You are worthless. God does not love you. There is no way out. Death is better than this pain. And here is the prophetic connection that no one expected. Remember that Christ told Faustina in 1937 that a war was coming and that Poland would suffer terribly? 2 years later, on September 1st, 1939, exactly 14 months after Faustina's death, Nazi Germany invaded Poland. The Second World War began. 6 million Poles died, including 3 million Polish Jews in the Holocaust. Warsaw was destroyed. The convent where Faustina lived was bombed. But here is the detail that proves that Faustina's message was not a psychological fantasy. During the war, thousands of Poles, Catholics and Jews prayed the chaplet of mercy that Christ taught Faustina, and dozens of survivors documented specific miracles. One verifiable example. In March 1943, during the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, a Jewish family named Ulma hid 8 Jews in their home in Markowa. When the Nazis discovered them, they executed the entire Ulma family, father, pregnant mother, and 6 children. But the 8 hidden Jews escaped. How? According to the testimony of Chaim Goldstein, one of the survivors, preserved at the Yad Vashem Museum in Jerusalem. The moment the shots started, we heard a woman praying in Polish, "For the sake of his sorrowful passion, have mercy on us." It was the prayer that St. Faustina had made known. The Nazis became confused about how many people were in the house. We managed to flee through the back door while they reloaded their weapons. Coincidence? Psychological explanation? Or exactly what Christ promised Faustina, that this prayer would be a shield at the hour of temptation and danger? And now the urgency turns to the present. We live in a time that modern theologians call the Second Darkness, a parallel to the darkness that preceded the Second World War. Not physical war yet, but spiritual war on a global scale. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people aged 15 to 29 worldwide, according to the WHO. Despair is the invisible epidemic, and Christ told Faustina, entry 1D508, "Mankind will not find peace until it turns with confidence to my mercy." Here is the concept of invisible permanence that Faustina taught and that changes everything. When you pray, "Jesus, I trust in you," at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the hour of mercy, you are not just engaging in personal devotion. You are entering a cosmic battle. Christ told Faustina, entry 1-320, "In this hour, try to immerse yourself in my mercy. Plunge into it like someone drowning in water, and I will use you as an instrument to free other souls from despair." Think about it. When you pray a 5-minute prayer at 3 p.m., you might be preventing someone on the other side of the world from committing suicide. Not metaphorically, literally, because God is outside of time. Your prayer today can be applied to someone's crisis that happened yesterday or will happen tomorrow. And if that sounds too mystical, consider the verifiable testimony of Father Donald Calloway, documented in his book, Champions of the Rosary, 2016. In 1992, I was a drug addict, planning suicide, hopeless. The moment I was about to shoot myself, a phrase popped into my mind out of nowhere: "Jesus, I trust in you." I did not know where it came from. Years later, when I converted and studied Saint Faustina, I discovered it was the central prayer of divine mercy. And then I discovered that my grandmother, who died 3 years earlier, prayed the chaplet of mercy for me every day at 3 p.m. On the exact day I planned to kill myself, she would have prayed for me at 3 p.m. I was going to kill myself at 3:30 p.m. This is invisible permanence. Small actions, 5 minutes of prayer, have eternal consequences that cross time and space. And the demon hates this because it destroys his main power, making you believe that your spiritual choices do not matter, that you are alone, that God is not listening. So how long will you believe the lie? How long will you allow despair to convince you that there is no way out? How long will you ignore the weapons that Christ has already placed in your hands? Faustina fought for 7 years, from 1931 to 1938, against daily attacks, and she won, not because she was special, but because she used weapons that anyone can use. And these weapons have been documented, tested, and proven by 87 years of testimonies around the world. Now, the time has come for you to learn to use them. So what does this mean for you practically? I am not suggesting you join a convent or have mystical visions, but there are 3 specific practices that Christ taught Faustina, recorded in her diary, tested by millions of Catholics and Protestants since 1938, and that you can start today, not to impress God, but to survive the invisible war you are fighting. Practice 1. Trust as an offensive weapon, Faustina wrote, entry 1 on 578. Christ told me, the soul that trusts in me is the happiest, because I myself take care of everything that concerns it. And the more a soul trusts, the more it will receive. Souls that trust without limits are a great comfort to me. But here is what most do not understand. Trust is not a feeling, it is a decision. Faustina did not feel trust when the demon attacked her. She decided to trust despite the fear, the doubt, the darkness. So here is the concrete practice that Faustina used, recorded by Father Sopoćko in his book DivineMercy in My Soul, 1948. Every morning, before any other activity, Faustina would say aloud, Jesus, I trust in you, even when I do not feel your presence. Jesus, I trust in you, even when it seems that you are silent. Jesus, I trust in you, even when temptation tells me I'm unworthy. Jesus, I trust in you, not because I deserve it, but because you promised. Repeat this 5 times every morning for 30 days, not as a magic mantra, but as will training. You are teaching your soul to act in faith before your feelings follow. And 2 Corinthians 5:7 confirms, for we walk by faith, not by sight. Why does this work? Because the demon attacks through feelings, fear, doubt, despair. When you declare trust verbally, you are challenging his emotional narrative with objective truth. And James 4:7 promises, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Practice 2. Mercy as a defensive weapon. Christ told Faustina, entry 1:148, I demand from you deeds of mercy, which are to arise from love for me. You are to show mercy to your neighbors always and everywhere. You must not shrink from this or try to excuse or absolve yourself from it. But then Christ specified 3 types of mercy. Not abstract, but concrete. Mercy by action. Do something tangible for someone who hurt you or who is in need. Examples Faustina practiced: visiting and praying with condemned prisoners, washing the feet of beggars who came to the convent, writing letters of encouragement to people who had ridiculed her. Your practical application: choose one person who caused you emotional pain in the last 6 months. Do one concrete act of kindness for that person this week. It can be specific prayer for 15 minutes, a message of encouragement, or an anonymous act of service. Not because you feel like it, but because Christ commanded it. Mercy by word. Defend someone who is being verbally attacked. Faustina wrote, entry 1:431, Christ told me, when you see someone being defamed or humiliated, defend them, even if it costs you ridicule, because when you defend the weak, I defend you. Your practical application: the next time you hear someone being defamed in a conversation, on social media, at a family gathering, interrupt politely but firmly. Say, I will not participate in this conversation. That person is not here to defend themselves. You will lose popularity, but you will gain spiritual authority. Mercy by prayer. Pray for your enemies with brutal specificity. Faustina had a written list of names of people who had hurt her, including the Mother Superior who publicly humiliated her and confessors who said she was crazy, and she prayed for each one, by name, every night. Your practical application: Write a list of 3 people who caused you deep pain, and every night for 7 days, pray like this: Jesus, for the sake of your sorrowful passion, have mercy on name, not because they deserve it, but because you are merciful. And have mercy on me too, because I am also a sinner. Why does this work? Because when you choose mercy, despite the pain, you break the cycle of bitterness that the demon uses to keep you trapped. And Matthew 5:7 promises, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy." Practice. 3. The hour of mercy, 3 p.m. daily. This is the most specific and powerful weapon Christ gave Faustina. He said, entry 1572, "At 3 o'clock implore my mercy, especially for sinners, and even if only for a brief moment, immerse yourself in my passion, particularly in my abandonment at the moment of agony. This is the hour of great mercy for the whole world." Faustina tested this systematically. She documented 41 specific instances in her diary where she prayed at 3 p.m. for impossible situations and witnessed supernatural interventions. 3 verifiable examples. Case 1, entry 1698. Faustina prayed at 3 p.m. for a murderer named Kazimierz Żuk, who refused confession before execution. 2 hours later, the prison priest returned and said, "He asked to see me, confessed everything, received the Eucharist weeping. I do not know what changed." Case 2, entry 1-788. Faustina prayed at 3 p.m. for a woman in labor with complications that doctors said she would not survive. The child was born healthy 45 minutes later, and the mother recovered completely. Case 3, entry 1820. Faustina prayed at 3 p.m. for the conversion of a priest who had lost his faith and planned to leave the priesthood. 3 days later, he asked to see Father Sopoćko and said, "Something changed in me. I cannot explain it, but faith returned." So here is your concrete practice. Every day, exactly at 3 p.m., stop what you are doing for 3 minutes. Set an alarm on your phone. It does not matter where you are. Work, traffic, home. Stop. Pray this prayer, given by Jesus to Faustina in entry 1572. "O blood and water, which gushed forth from the heart of Jesus as a fountain of mercy for us, I trust in you. Eternal Father, I offer you the body and blood, soul and divinity of your dearly beloved Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, in atonement for our sins and those of the whole world. For the sake of his sorrowful passion, have mercy on us and on the whole world." Afterward, pray for one specific person who is in crisis. It can be yourself, someone you love, or even an enemy. Be specific. Use names. Describe the situation. Why 3 p.m.? Because it is the documented hour of Jesus' death on the cross. John 19:30 says, "Jesus cried out, 'It is finished,' and bowing his head, he gave up his spirit." That was approximately the 9th hour, 3 p.m. in the modern time system. It is the moment when God's mercy was poured out most fully, and Christ told Faustina that this hour is like a portal open in time, when prayers have special power. Test this for 40 days. Document what happens. Faustina said, "You will not see results in every case, but you will see enough to know that it is real." Saint Helena Kowalska discovered something that challenges all modern psychology and watered-down theology, that despair is not a mental illness to be medicated. It is a spiritual attack to be resisted, and that victory does not come from feeling good, but from choosing to trust when you feel your worst. Think of the final image of Faustina's life. October 1938. She is dying of tuberculosis at age 33, the same age as Christ at the crucifixion. Her body is ravaged. She weighs 84 pounds. She coughs up blood constantly. The pain is so intense that she cannot sleep for more than 2 hours at a time. And on the night of October 5th, 1938, her last documented hours, Sister Claudia asked, "Sister Faustina, are you afraid of death?" Faustina replied, and this was recorded in Claudia's letter to Father Sopoćko, preserved in the archives, I am not afraid. I trust. If Christ takes me today, it will be mercy. If he leaves me here, it will also be mercy. I choose nothing more. I only trust." 3 hours later, at 10:45 p.m., Faustina died. Sister Claudia wrote, "The moment she took her last breath, the entire infirmary was filled with a scent of roses. There were no roses in the convent. It is October in Poland. There are no roses. But the scent was undeniable. 5 of us witnessed it." Faustina's body was buried in the convent cemetery. No special honors, no grand ceremony. Many sisters still thought she was crazy, and for 28 years her grave was forgotten, covered in weeds. But then, in 1965, the Archbishop of Krakow, a young man named Karol Wojtyła, initiated a formal investigation into Faustina's life. He studied her diary, interviewed surviving witnesses, examined medical documents, and he concluded, this woman was not crazy. She was a prophet. In 1978, Karol Wojtyła became Pope John Paul II, and on April 30th, 2000, he canonized Faustina in a ceremony in St. Peter's Square with over 200,000 people present. John Paul II said in his homily, recorded in the Vatican archives, "The message of divine mercy that Christ entrusted to Sister Faustina is God's answer to the century of despair, a century marked by 2 world wars, the Holocaust, genocides, abortion, mass suicide. Against this despair, God raised a voice, 'Trust in my mercy. No matter how far you have gone, no matter what you have done, I love you.'" Today, 87 years after Faustina's death, the Feast of Divine Mercy, the first Sunday after Easter, instituted by John Paul II in 2000, is celebrated in 167 countries. The Chaplet of Mercy is prayed in 92 different languages. Faustina's diary has sold over 30 million copies and is translated into 54 languages, and tens of thousands of verified testimonies of conversions, healings, and deliverances are documented in Divine Mercy shrines around the world. Faustina died young, in pain, rejected by many. But 87 years later, millions speak her name every week because she won the invisible war. Not by the absence of attack, but by the choice to trust in the midst of the attack. And now the story turns to you. You are facing your own invisible war. It may not be a physical attack by visible demons. It may be depression that crushes you every morning. It may be anxiety that steals your sleep. It may be guilt for past sins that you cannot let go of. It may be anger at God for unanswered prayers. It may be loneliness that makes you question if anyone loves you, including God. And the demon is whispering the same lies he whispered to Faustina. You are worthless. God does not care. There is no way out. The pain will never end. Give up. But Christ is offering the same weapons he gave Faustina. Trust in me, even when you do not feel me. Practice mercy, even when you do not want to. Pray at 3 p.m., even when it seems useless. And I will fight for you. The question is not whether the war is real. Faustina proved that it is. The question is not whether the weapons work. Millions of testimonies prove that they work. The question is, will you use the weapons or will you give up? Judas gave up. Faustina fought. 2,000 years of history bear witness that trust conquers despair, mercy conquers bitterness, perseverance conquers suicidal temptation. And today, in this moment, you have the same choice that Faustina had on September 13th, 1936, when the demon first attacked her. You can believe the despair, or you can whisper, even without feeling it, even with tears in your eyes, even with a trembling voice, Jesus, I trust in you. If this story found you in your darkest moment, if out of all the videos you could watch today, you watched this one, maybe it is not a coincidence. Maybe it is God using Faustina's story to tell you, I have not abandoned you. I am training you. This war is not a sign of my absence. It is a sign that you matter so much that hell fears you. So do not give up. Use the weapons I gave, and you will win. If Faustina's courage gave you hope, if this script reminded you that despair is not destiny, do not let that light go out here. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that most churches never tell. Like this video so that the algorithm shows this to someone who is thinking of giving up today. And share it with one specific person who you know is facing their own invisible war. You can be the ray of mercy that saves a life. And remember, at 3 p.m. today, pray for 3 minutes. Just test it. See what happens. Because Faustina was right. Jesus, I trust in you, is not a prayer. It is a declaration of war against hell. And you already have everything you need to win.